Hey guys, I'm Saurav. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I will review your Instagram photos. So a few weeks before, I asked you guys to tag me on Instagram so that I can review your photos. I have selected some of the images out of them and I'll try my best to review them in this video. Most of the photographers are either beginners or amateurs, so I will be a bit lenient for the part 1 review, but not too lenient at the same time because then you won't be able to understand how to improve your photos. And the thing is, photography is a subjective matter. You may or may not agree with me. I'm just trying to analyze the photos and tell you what you can improve in the photos, right? Even I'm an amateur photographer, even I'm learning photography. So again, you may or may not agree with me, but I'll try my best to review them so that it becomes helpful for you guys, right? So without wasting any time, let's get started. So this is the first image. I genuinely like the image. The photographer has intentionally used a symmetrical composition, and whenever there is a reflection, I always try to go with the symmetrical composition. So kudos for that. And there's a small house also that is very intelligently placed at the rule of thirds. So again, composition in the image is very strong. The reason I'm giving this image 3 stars is because there are a couple of things that I feel can be improved. One is, if you see these things are slightly distracting. So I will just crop it a bit from the left side. That's the first thing. And the next thing is, it's a bit over processed. If you see, there's too much of sharpening, too much of clarity going in this image, and because of that there are halos between the highlights and shadows, and also a lot of noise in the sky. Now if the image was not over processed, I would have definitely given this image at least 4, and if this image would have been properly cropped, this image obviously deserves a 5-star then. So this is the next image. The photographer intentionally has used horizontal and vertical symmetry at the same time, and there's a very good contrast between the left and the right glass as well. The right glass being filled with a different colored liquid, and again with a darker colored liquid because of the contrast. I really love the thinking and the efforts put behind the lighting of this photo as well. So very well done. Maybe I would have placed the camera a bit below to get a perfect reflection, but other than that, this image is great and it deserves 4 stars. So this is the next image. It's really a good image. The reason I love this image is because it's a slightly different perspective. The photographer is really close to the animal and the photographer has perfectly captured the moment of the subject. So I really appreciate the photo. There are certain problems with this. One is, if you focus on the extreme left, the tail is a bit cut from the left side, and the same is the problem with the tree as well on the extreme right. One thing that I would have done is maybe move a bit backwards and slightly on the left hand side and try to get both of them in the image without cutting any of them, or focus only on the main subject, that is the animal, and completely ignore the tree, right? Because if you're including a subject, make sure you're not abruptly cutting it, because then it just becomes a distraction. But I really love the perspective, and the photographer has done a wonderful job here. Okay, so this is the next image. This is the first image in this video that I am giving 5 stars, and there's some reasons for it as well. This is again still wool photography. If you don't know how to do still wool photography, I have a separate video on it on my channel. The reason I love this is it is not a very typical still wool image, right? The model has taken the efforts of climbing this particular structure and then he took the image. So it's a really very different perspective. We don't get to see a lot of still wool photos of this kind. And also the reason I love this photo is, if you can see, there's circular streaks as well. So the model has moved in a circular manner, and this is a very small thing of the image, but the photographer has taken a lot of things into consideration while making this image. So I really appreciate the photographer. Maybe I would have tried to exclude this particular tree on the left because it's a bit distracting, but I really appreciate the efforts and there's nothing much to complain about. So this image definitely deserves 5 stars. This is the next image, and again, when I see an astro image, I already fall in love with it, and I'm going with 4 stars. The reason I'm giving it 4 stars is because when you're capturing the Milky Way, if you're including an object, the image already looks much more interesting. And the photographer intentionally has used this particular tree as the object. So I'm definitely giving it 4 stars. The reason I'm not giving this image 5 stars is there are 3 things that can be done different. One is, if you zoom in, you can see there's a bit of star trail. Now I would not go with that. I would slightly use a shorter shutter speed and a higher ISO. Now I understand in astrophotography the ISO is already very high, but for me what is more important is, when I'm capturing Milky Way, I want the stars to be extremely sharp. So I'm okay with increasing the ISO, but I want the stars to be tack sharp. That's the first thing. The second thing is, there's a bit of distraction on the left side. If you see, this is a negative space. If that could have been cropped, that would have been better. And if you're going with a silhouette result, then it's okay, but you should try also light painting the foreground, and if you could get some details out of the foreground, you can also go with that. But if you're going with the silhouette, that's completely fine. So I appreciate the efforts. It's not easy to capture these images, so I give this image 4 stars. This is the next image and it's a very lovely image. Two birds, again, very different kind of action captured. The bird on the right, you have got a straight portrait, very good portrait. The eyes are extremely sharp and wide open. The bird on the left, you have perfectly captured the moment. And I really like the contrast between the characteristics of the two birds. It's a very tighter composition to avoid the distractions. Maybe I would have tried a slightly different composition, but I can obviously understand it's very difficult to work with distractions in such situations. There's nothing much wrong with the image. This image definitely deserves 4 stars. So this is the next image and one of my favorite images out of the set. I really love how the photographer has very intelligently used the harsh light. As you can see, it's an inverted image, and why I love this image is the photographer has taken care of the position of the sun, how the shadow is going to cast on the road, and it's shot with a wider angle lens, so the distorted shadow makes it look even more dynamic. So the image is very dynamic. There's a contrast between the smaller person and the bigger shadow. I like the image, the composition's great, and the black and white makes it look much more interesting. I really appreciate this image and it definitely deserves 5 stars. Okay, so this is the next image and I don't want to sound too harsh, but I'm going with 2 stars on this image. This image is good and it can definitely get 3 or a 4 star because the photographer has used a faster shutter speed to capture the perfect moment as well. And I like the image, that is why I've selected the image for the review. The reason why I'm going with 2 stars is if you zoom on the reflection, the first idea might be there was a bit of camera shake, but that is not the case because the subject is actually tacked sharp, so there is no camera shake. The problem is with the surface that you're using for getting the reflection. The surface is not perfect and that is why there is a problem with the reflection, and that is why I'm giving it 2 stars. There's nothing much wrong with the image, even the lighting is good. The only reason I'm being a bit harsh on this one is just because of that reflection. If this image would have a perfect reflection, this image definitely deserves minimum 3 or even a 4. Okay, so this is the next image and I like the feel of the image and the black and white look, so I'm giving it 3 stars. The reason I'm not giving it 4 because as you can see the bridge is symmetrical in shape and I think the photographer wanted to capture it in a symmetrical manner. At least I would have done that way, but it's not perfect symmetry. As you can see, there's a bit of negative space on the left side that I would have cropped. That is the first issue. The second issue is there's too much of noise in the image. Now noise is not bad, but a lot of external noise has been added in this image. Now I get why people add external noise to add a kind of a vintage look, but you have to do it in limits so that it doesn't look fake. And here I feel the amount of external noise is a bit too much. If that was less and if it was captured in a perfect symmetric manner, I think the image could have also got a 4 star as well. So this is the next image and I love the image. There's no doubt in my mind I'm giving this image 5 stars. There are many reasons I love this image. One is the photographer has very intelligently captured the foggy light and the photographer intentionally used a warmer white balance for a warmer look. So kudos for that. And there's a bit of backlight in the crops as well that makes it look much more interesting. The human figure is placed very intelligently at the center and not very far, not very close. So I genuinely love the image. The only thing that I would have done is maybe shot this image a slightly darker, so I would have got the details in the highlights as well. But that is a personal preference. I generally don't go with overblown highlights. But overall the image is very good. The feel of the image is very good. So this image obviously deserves 5 stars from my side. So this is the next image, a very simple image having a very minimal look. I'm giving this image 3 stars. The reason I like the image is because of the minimal look. It has a very uniform color palette all over the image. The small boat is again placed at the center, so it's not distracting as well. The only thing I would have done different is maybe position the camera a bit downwards, get a bit more of water and less of the sky. Because as you can see, there's not much interest in the sky. There's not much contrast or color. So I would have at least went with 1/3 of the water and 2/3 of the mountains and the sky. But other than that, this image is good. So I'm giving it 3 stars. Okay, so this is the next image and it's a bit interesting one. I really like the flow of the water stream here, but I'm going with 2 stars here. Now the reason I'm being harsh on this image is I feel there's a lot of things that's wrong, but if those things are improved, you can get a really good image. The first thing is this part on the left bottom. If you see, it's very bright and it's distracting the viewer from the subject. I can totally understand sometimes it's not possible to avoid the distractions, but whenever I'm taking an image and there's an object that is distracting the viewer, what I would try to do is first obviously try to completely avoid it. If it's not possible, I will actually reduce the exposure of that part so that it's not very bright and not very distracting at the same time. That's the first thing. The second thing is the image is very over processed and it destroys the natural feel and look of the image. There's a lot of HDR look and lot of sharpening that's going on. So whenever you're processing the image, the intention should be to process the image to make it look better than the raw file, but to not over process the image till a point where it starts looking fake, right? So that is a thing that I don't like about this image. And don't get me wrong, just because I'm rating an image 2 stars, that doesn't mean I don't like the image. I like the image, but I think it has a lot of potential to improve. So if these two things are taken care of, it can eventually get a 3 or a 4 also. This is the next image and I'm going with 5 stars, and there's only single reason for it. Obviously, the colors are vibrant, the contrast is on point, the image is very well processed, but the reason I'm going with 5 stars is the story. If you see on the top left side, these eyes are looking at the car and the car's glass is broken, right? So my eyes are drawn to the eyes first and then to the cars, right? There's a story behind this image and it is helping the viewer to see the image and to understand this image. And whenever I see a story in this image, I fall in love with it. The photographer has very beautifully composed this image, a very tighter composition, no distractions, a beautiful story. Very beautiful looking image, definitely deserves 5 stars. The next image I'm giving 4 stars. There are 2 reasons why I love this image. One is the unique perspective and the composition. As you can see, the perspective is a bit different. The camera is slightly positioned below the eye level and the camera is tilted upwards to get this unique perspective, and that is one thing I like about this image. And the next thing is the composition. There's a bit of leading lines in this image. The attention of the viewer goes from the bigger giant wheel to the top right to the smaller giant wheel on the bottom left. I would have tried to get the smaller giant wheel completely in the frame, but overall I like the image. The color grade is again good. It's a bit too much than I would have preferred, but overall the feel of the image is good, so I'm giving this image 4 stars. Okay, so this is the next image. This is the last image of the set and I love the image. I intentionally saved this image for the last, and this is my favorite image out of all the 15 images. Purav Shah is the photographer. You have done a wonderful and exceptional job. There are a lot of reasons why I love this image. Starting from the first reason, the photographer is really close to the subject and it's very difficult to get close to these subjects, because if you move even a bit, the subjects get distracted and they start moving away from you. So that is something I like. The next thing is the perspective. The photographer is very close to the water and that is why the image is looking very different. And when I see this image, I feel I'm right there experiencing this particular moment. The photographer has captured this particular moment exceptionally well. The composition is on point. I would have slightly moved the camera to the right to get the subject exactly at the center, but still I love the feel of the image. The image is very well processed. It's not too over processed. I see that you have added a soft glow on the right part to give it a much more dreamy look, and I have nothing to complain about. This is an exceptional image. You have done a wonderful job. Congratulations, Purav. This image definitely deserves 5 stars. That's it from this video, guys. I hope you have enjoyed the video and you got to learn something. If your photos were not selected, don't get disappointed. I will do more of this. This is my Instagram profile. You can follow me on Instagram. I will do similar contests in future also. If you like the video, press the like button. If you're new to the channel and you want to see more photography related content, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, right? I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.